What's happening, good people? Welcome to Leadership in Real Life, where we talk about what leadership actually looks like in real time. I'm H-Monét, leadership coach and former school principal, helping leaders balance people, performance, and priorities without burning out. Let's get into it. Now, before we jump into today's conversation, I want to revisit last week's episode where we talked about why accountability feels so uncomfortable for good leaders. And if you listen to that episode, go listen to it if you haven't. You know that we talked about how many leaders avoid accountability conversations because they care deeply. They don't want to disappoint people. They don't want to damage the professional relationship. They don't want to create tension. They don't want to be perceived as harsh or not caring. I think that episode helped us to understand that the discomfort is normal, right? But today we're taking it a step further. Because knowing accountability is uncomfortable and avoiding accountability are two very different things. And that's where today's conversation begins. Because the conversation that you're avoiding doesn't disappear. It simply gets more expensive. I want you to sit with that for a moment. That conversation that you're avoiding doesn't disappear. It simply gets more expensive. And if we're being honest, every leader listening probably can think of a conversation right now, whether it's a performance issue, a conflict between team members, a broken commitment, a behavior that's becoming a pattern and having a negative impact, an expectation that hasn't been met. And every time you think about addressing it, you find a reason to wait. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe they already know. Maybe next week is a better time. Does any of that sound familiar? And the problem is that leadership issues rarely improve through avoidance. Most of the time, those issues grow. And so by the end of today's episode, I want to help us to understand the hidden cost of avoiding those difficult conversations and why those conversations become bigger than they started and how to prepare for them so you can lead with clarity instead of carrying that frustration. Difficult conversations are a part of leadership. They're not a leadership failure if you have to have one, but avoiding the difficult conversation is a leadership failure. So let's talk about it. Now, one of the biggest mistakes leaders make is believing that they had the conversation when they really haven't. Because many leaders don't completely avoid the conversation altogether. Instead, they'll attempt to have the conversation and dance all around it. They beat around the bush. They soften the message, they hint, they imply, they hope the person gets it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So let's talk about what this looks like in leadership in real life. Let me give you an example. A leader notices an employee is repeatedly late to work. The leader is frustrated. The leader sees the pattern in the behavior. The leader knows it needs to be addressed, but instead of saying, hey, I've noticed a pattern of late arrivals to work and we need to talk about it, they'll say, let's continue working on time management. Or we need to remember the importance of on-time arrival to work. Or let's keep improving in this area of getting to work on time. Now, the leader leaves the conversation thinking, check, done, I addressed it. Meanwhile, the employee leaves the conversation thinking, things are cool. Getting to work on time is important. The team needs to remember that. And if you gave those reminders in a team meeting rather than a one-on-one, then you have the team thinking, we get here on time. This isn't an issue that we're having. And they've recognized that employee that's arriving late and are wondering why you, the leader, didn't address it directly. And if you don't address it, it sends the message that late arrival is okay. So then other employees may start arriving later. Y'all see the problem? So you have the leader who walks away frustrated. The late employee doesn't realize that they're cultivating an issue. And the team thinks that you think late arrival is okay. And all parties leave the exact same conversation with completely different understandings. That's not communication. You have just cultivated a whole bunch of confusion, and that confusion is expensive. And eventually the leader reaches the point where they're angry that nothing changed. The team becomes frustrated because that late arrival is impacting them negatively. And then the late employee's perspective, Nobody ever clearly told them that this was a serious issue. And then don't let a blow up happen, because now the employee will feel blindsided. They'll feel misled. The trust starts to break down, and the leader is wondering, why are they surprised? And they're surprised because you never gave them clarity. That's why. This is why balanced leadership teaches that clarity is an act of care. Clarity is an act of care. And many leaders think empathy means protecting people from discomfort. That care, protecting people from discomfort. But real care and empathy in leadership says, I care about you enough to tell you the truth. And the cost of avoiding difficult conversations is the unspoken frustration. So let's go back to the example I just shared. The frustration about the team member arriving late and then not being addressed. It created more team dysfunction than the leader realized, because the issue didn't disappear when the leader broadly mentioned it to the team. The frustration simply went underground. A leader became irritated. The impacted colleagues on the team became resentful because this person's being allowed to arrive late. And so the team starts making assumptions, and nobody said anything. So that unspoken tension grew and grew and grew, until one day somebody finally said something. And then again, everybody is in shock about how emotional that reaction is. But the reaction wasn't about that moment. The reaction was about the 6 months of unspoken frustration. It was about every issue that never got addressed, every expectation that was never clarified, every concern that was never discussed. And so that's why you'll sometimes see a small issue turn into a major conflict. The original issue was actually small, but it just accumulated interest. And that silence didn't reduce the tension, it exacerbated it. It relocated it. It moved from conversation into the relationship, into the culture of the team, of the organization, into the trust, into the collaboration, into the morale. And eventually that tension can negatively impact performance. And nobody wants that. Talk about the actual cost. Every avoided conversation creates a leadership invoice. First, there's the true cost. People losing confidence when leaders avoid obvious issues. Then there's the culture cost, because what leaders tolerate eventually becomes accepted behavior. So going back to the example again, not addressing the late arrival of one employee sends the message that it's okay. And so more employees start arriving later and later. Then there's the performance cost. Problems continue longer than necessary, which impacts motivation and drive. And then you have the morale cost. Your high performers become frustrated when accountability feels inconsistent. And then you finally have the capacity cost, because the avoided conversations take up mental space. And then sometimes those avoided conversations put more work on other people. So think about them. You rehearse those avoided issues. You stress about them. You carry them around, and all of that just drains your energy. But here's the good news. It's not that most leaders don't have the courage to have the difficult conversations. They just need more preparation to approach the difficult conversations. Because those difficult conversations become easier when leaders know exactly what they're trying to accomplish before they walk into the room to have the conversation. And so that's why I created my Balanced Leadership Difficult Conversation Clarity Guide. So before any difficult conversation, I want you to answer 5 questions. Number 1, what is the actual issue? Number 2, why does this issue matter? Number 3, what outcome am I hoping for? Number 4, how will I balance empathy and accountability in this conversation? And number 5, what commitment needs to be made moving forward? Those 5 questions create clarity before the conversation even begins. And prepared leaders communicate more clearly than reactive leaders. So it's really important that you go into these conversations prepared. So here's what I want you to do this week. Identify one difficult conversation that you've been avoiding, just one. And I want you to answer these 5 questions. What's the actual issue? Why does it matter? What outcome am I hoping for? How can I balance empathy and accountability in the conversation? And what commitment needs to come from this conversation? Then I want you to schedule that conversation, and not for next month, not when things calm down, not after one more incident happens, this week. And so last week's lesson was about how accountability feels uncomfortable. This week's lesson is the avoidance of the accountability is expensive. So stop avoiding. Leadership requires us to hold two truths at the same time. Number one, difficult conversations can be uncomfortable. That's clear. But number two, avoiding them costs way more than having them. So strong leaders don't wait until the issues become a crisis. They address them while they're still just conversations. And so if today's episode resonated with you, here's your next step. You can message me clarity and I'll send you the Balanced Leadership Difficult Conversation Clarity Guide so you can prepare for your next difficult conversation with confidence, with care and compassion, with empathy and accountability. Then if you haven't already, I need you to subscribe to Balanced Leadership with H-Monét. And if you know another leader who's carrying around a conversation that they need to have, share this episode with them. It could probably help. And as always, lead with heart, lead with strategy, and let's build a leadership that actually lasts. I'll see you next week in the next Leadership in Real Life moment.